I think of myself mostly as a writer, then I guess as a singer. Mm-hmm. The melody in the singing is challenging, you know. It's like I'm always trying to do that in an honest way, but I'm not a musician, you know. I'm just reacting and just playing, and I try, you know, I dive in a bunch of different ways, and I write 20 melodies to the same loop, you know, the same 4 bars, you know, trying to just what's that bridge melody or what's that, you know? But that's fun for me. A lot of stuff I've tried to write sort of like classic songs, like you know, and I was doing that a lot with the solo stuff. I don't feel like writing a ballad for a while, you know, or a harp, you know, but I also can't help when I'm writing lyrics and stuff and getting moved by music. I write these sad ass lines, right? And like, and what are they about? I don't know, you know, or angry lines, or these things that are like, that's the way I write in these kind of little fragments and start to try to create a collage of something that kind of feels like something, you know, and that feels honest.
I'm curious, I know a lot about you, we've worked together for a long time, but I don't know everything. And I'm curious, with sort of older stuff, how far can you go back in your family's lineage, ancestors, that kind of stuff?
I know there's like a lot of Irish, German sort of stuff. So, but I think the name Berninger is kind of, I said it was from the Alsace-Lorraine area, sort of German and French zone. I know that a lot. But then my mom's side, there's a lot of Irish stuff. You know, my mom's real artsy, and I know her grandfather was really like a painter. And then from my dad's side, he was kind of, none of his other siblings, or I think his mom and dad or my grandparents up there were I don't know, there was a lot of art going on, but my dad was kind of really artsy and like drawing notebooks and sketching and writing poems and stuff. And so I think he and my mom connected on this sort of, they were both kind of the artsiest ones in their families.
But are there musicians in your family that you knew of before you, or are you the first?
You mean, yeah, not really, no. Yeah. I mean, I had some second cousins in Cincinnati that actually were in a punk band called the Tiger Lilies. But I didn't really hang out with them. They were like second cousins, and they're older. But I got into kind of music in Cincinnati through my sister, and then through a radio station and stuff like that. But it wasn't like there was. I took piano lessons for a little bit when I was a kid, and really kind of had a panic attack when the recitals and the sort of the competitive idea of it. Same thing with sports. Like I loved sports until suddenly, you know, everyone would, you know, you would actually anger people if you didn't catch the ball, you know. Parents and dads would start screaming, your friends would start yelling at you, you know. So when that started happening in music, in piano recitals, that's kind of, I just bailed. So I didn't get back into becoming a musician until, you know, meeting Scott Devendorf in college, and then we had a band called Nancy, and I just started singing and writing, and I was a big fan of, you know, I'd been a fan of Joy Division and the Smiths and all this stuff, but then Guided by Voices and Pavement, and that right then especially I just felt like, yeah, I can do that. I can, you know, David Berman, I could jump in and be one of those kind of singers and writers, and that's when I really kind of started to take it seriously. But then this whole time I was also a graphic designer in New York City and stuff.
So everything you're doing is some version of creative art, just whatever.
This kind of great wave of moving to New York City I loved college, I loved design school, and that's where we kind of all that college band started. So music and design, and then I moved to New York, and that was fantastic. Just such a dream. And so you're in this new city, and I had a good job, and then I was also going to see all these bands at Mercury Lounge. And
this is like early 2000s. What year did you move to New York?
I moved in '96.
Oh, wow. Okay,
So yeah, and so I was you know, always going to other music, and which was right up the street from. I worked in the Puck Building, and for 8 years, and I had this job, and I was a graphic designer, and kind of moving up the ranks from, you know, till I was a creative director, and then we got bought by a Swedish company, and I was flying to all over the world in presentations into London. It was really, it was kind of jet setting in that. It was right when in the bubble, the internet, you know, it was new media stuff and websites and all that, all these new companies, and it was really it was fun, and So that was happening at the same time. Also, I'm kind of secretly getting together in Gowanus Canal, like loft, with rats.
Different Gowanus.
Yeah, back at this dead end block, and I had all this space, and we were setting up. Brian, brought his drums over, and we kind of started making demos, because I would go to Mercury Lounge, 3 nights a week, or wherever, Brownies or all the clubs,
that block.
Arlene's Grocery and all that kind of stuff, and even all the places out in Brooklyn. It was just so exciting, and the music scene. So I was like, the Nationals started cooking up, stuff, and that was came from the ashes of my college band, Nancy. That all happened in those kind of early bubbly years. And then 99, I guess, that is when the National was was a band, and we started playing out, and I think in 98 or 99.
Wow. So many guests that I've talked to, there's a sibling who gets them into music, right? You didn't have a super musical family, but it sounds like your sister was an important person in somehow getting you playing music. Is she an older sister?
She was an older sister, a year and a half older. She was in 2 grades older than I was, and it was specifically. She was. It wasn't like she was like deep into super underground stuff, but it was there was a particular radio station, 97X WOXY, that was right at Oxford, Ohio. She went to college there, and so did I for 2 years, a liberal arts school. And they had but even when we were in high school, it was that radio station, you're hearing Joy Division and The Cure and the Smiths, and all. It was great, And then there was good radio stations. NKU had a station. I can't remember what it was, but anyway. And then there was this thing. There was this riverboat cruise that you would pick up, and it was called Currents, and you could go down to the Ohio River. And you'd pick it up around 8 o'clock, and it'd be back by like 11:30. But it would go back up and down, and they would play in The Cure and Ministry and it was
like a party boat type thing.
It was in a dance, and everybody would be dancing, and there all these goth kids dancing, and I was underage.
That's amazing.
You could drink, they would serve us. So that's where not legally, but so you could. So I did, and I was dancing and listening to, Erasure and Depeche Mode and all that stuff, and that's kind of where I really was awakened by, and that kind of led to REM, but it was, the early Smiths and Louder Than Bombs, that record,
I thought that was an album when I was a kid, which is like 22 singles.
Right. But that my sister had that orange thing, and so I remember that one, and another, Violent Femmes was like such a mass of that. So whenever that is when I started thinking of music more like, literature and how sexy and fun it can be, and I love that, whatever those, all the girls dancing to Erasure and Depeche Mode and wearing all black and
on a boat.
Yeah, I was at an all boys Jesuit high school, and I didn't meet those kind of girls.
Right.
And I liked those kind of girls. So that was where I was like, I want to be the type of guy that those girls like.
Yeah. That's why every dude started a band.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So would your sister take you to shows? 2 years when you're that age is like an important time, right? You can.
We would do that riverboat thing.
Really?
I don't like I remember. I do remember one of the seminal show that I was like, I want to do that, was Thompson Twins, which was even earlier than
I saw all these same shows. I lived in Salt Lake City then, but we were around the same age, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
And eventually I saw Iggy Pop at the same place that I saw Thompson Twins and the stuff. There is that place called Bogart's. Notorious. There's been people murdered there, but I would go there. But it was a lot of it was that radio station. I just got hooked on that, and then went to that school for 2 years in Oxford, Ohio, which was just perfect college in the woods and brick buildings, and I was an RA the second year, you know.
A resident advisor?
Yes, and I was, you know, and I was
in charge of the dorms.
I was a cool RA. As long as everybody was nice, I let them do whatever they want. You know, so for the most part, I was very, very easy on everybody. But I was like, you know, so perfect, you know, postcard college experience. But then I switched to the University of Cincinnati because they had this great design program, and I had to start over a 5-year program. And so it was really intense design work, and I really felt, and you know, and that's ended up what I became a professional doing in New York, and it was great, and I loved it. And that's kind of where I started getting into music, and also like Brainiac was around, and we were seeing them at local places in Cincinnati. And
were they an Ohio band too?
Yeah. Well, kind of Dayton, and one of the guys went to UC and was in the same program in the fashion department. And we were seeing those local bands, and bands like Afghan Wigs, you know, were a big thing for me. And so I kind of seeing these local bands that were, you know, right on the heels of Nirvana getting signed to Sub Pop and this kind of thing, like Afghan Wigs, and then Brainiac, made me believe I could, you know, do that. And then Dayton with Guided by Voices and Breeders and all that being right there, we'd go see them, and that was it was like, this is
kind of an incredible time for Ohio.
Yeah. And then so I had that experience, you know, in college and in high school, and then into, you know, Lower East Side and in watching, you know, those first few Strokes shows. And then our own band, The National, started kind of bubbling up when I was living in that loft.
So what was the order of you leaving Cincinnati? So you already knew Scott and Brian in Cincinnati?
I knew Scott in college, and I knew he was in a band called Paleface Jimmy with his brother Brian. I'd seen them a couple times, and also Brian was in another band called Project Nim with Aaron and Bryce, and I had gone to see them, and that was Project Nim was it's kind of, I mean, it was 10,000 Maniacs sort of mixed with the Dead, you know, Grateful Dead.
That tracks, right?
Yeah, I think they would agree with that. And they had kind of like in the certain college circuits, specifically in New Orleans, like a real following and stuff.
Oh, weird.
Project Nim, they had a little thing going, and then in my college band we called, you know, it was Nancy, that, you know, that bubbled up with Mike Brewer, who I still write songs with, and Casey Reese, who became a professor, went to MIT then, he was a professor out here at UCLA. He's an artist and a really brilliant, still a dear friend, and a kind of creative comrade.
Right.
Because we were really, design school was really intense, and I you know, forged these really intense friendships through the art and these little bands and stuff. But living in New York in Lower East Side, when you know, seeing those first Strokes shows, also was just like, everything just was so on fire, and
crazy time.
Got really, really hungry to jump into that water, you know. And we were pretty bad at first.
Yeah.
You know?
So you went there first, and that to New York from Ohio.
To New York. Scott and I moved there around the same time in '96. Yeah, and then Aaron and I think Bryce was Bryce was in Yale. Aaron was in Columbia. Brian, I can't remember where Brian was in school, but they quit. They ended up in New York, and this was after I'd been there for a while in my college band. We'd all been there and kind of bubbling, but they had to move back to. Casey went to graduate school at MIT. Mike Brewer went back to Cincinnati, and so Scott and I were left, and that's kind of when Brian came in and brought Aaron in.
Right.
So it was Brian, Aaron, and I for a long, long time, and then eventually, you know, Aaron brought in Bryce, and then we brought in Pat Newsom for a while. So that was, it was a slow forming of the National until, you know, and then we started, you know, playing like Galapagos, you know, playing places like that a lot, and kind of the little things. And so we were like, you know, way in the shadow of the yeahs and TV on the radio and stuff like that, but going to all those shows and really, you know, and the Walkmen, you know, were our favorite, and you know, and we opened for the Walkmen and did little gigs like that, and we would go out and open for anybody. We opened for so many people, really fun, you know, experience. Like, we opened for Dan Byrne on a tour. We'd open. We learned a lot. opening for all kinds of different people.
The National's been a band for over 20 years, longer than you lived at home and grew up from being born to moving out, which is crazy. And and you're in a band with
brothers,
2 pairs of brothers,
family stuff,
and you.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there has to be a familial element to that.
Yeah, well, the Aaron and Bryce are twins, and they were kind of, and they were on sports teams with Brian when they were teenagers and stuff.
So they like the competitive stuff.
They're very competitive, and with Brian, they knew he was a great drummer and so they were always kind of like playing music with Brian way back, and so they have the 3 of them have a really old connection. So when Scott, brought his brother, I knew and I liked, and he's a brilliant drummer. And then Aaron, so we had these 2 sets of brothers, and so within the National, it was me, the one guy without the brother, for a long time. It was really a good balance. It was really a great balance, because they were kind of fighting each other or being competitive with each other, with a lot, and none of them could do what I did, none of them. No one ever wanted to take over that singer writing lyrics.
It's a different
role.
thing.
I would have welcomed any help. It's not easy. It's not easy out there sometimes. But
and you're very alone, and
and I was pretty stubborn, but so were they in their own pocket. So it was kind of a good balance of weight, in terms of which way a song or a record should go and all that stuff. And it got really, really like this a lot of time, but it somehow kept its center, because of that thing. And my brother kind of also was kind of a part of the band for a little while, and so I understand some of all those like feeling, but
not in a musical way, but in a creative way.
But just like kind of the spirit of the band way.
Right. I made videos. I
had a brother. I know how frustrating. My brother and I mean, he's 9 years younger, but I can still, I understand, what it's like to have a brother and be fighting with a brother, But in with regard to sort of the musical weight, because I'm not a musician, and
you don't consider yourself a musician?
No, I do. I do. But I mean, but I can't be.
You're not playing an instrument.
I can play harmonica pretty good. But but I'm very musical, and I have a way of it's singing and writing is you're presenting a character. I know how to do versions of that. I don't know, whatever that is.
Yeah, very well.
Frontman, singer, writer, whatever. I think of myself mostly as a writer, then I guess as a singer. But the writing doesn't matter that much if the singing, the melody in the singing is challenging. It's like I'm always trying to do that in an honest way. And anyway, but I'm not a musician. I'm just reacting and just playing, and I try. I dive in a bunch of different ways, and I write 20 melodies to the same loop, the same 4 bars, trying to just what's that bridge melody or what's that,
right.
And but that's fun for me. I get this obsessive creating little Legos. But anyway, with regard to the balance of family stuff, my wife also is a writer and an editor, and so she's really, really has a lot of I trust her. And so those guys do too. Sometimes even when she provides me a lot of weight too. If she's feeling a certain like they'll listen to her opinion more than they'll listen to mine, I think, and I think they would all agree with that, and I think that, so she's very valuable. I don't tell her what she hates about what I'm doing, or I don't tell them that. Working creatively with your brothers or with your wife, all that kind of stuff is really familiar territory, for me, and it's really it can be rocky.
Yeah. How has it evolved over the years? I mean, it's been such a long time.
I think it's, it goes in phases, it's like parts of it kind of, sometimes corners of it sort of get bad and you kind of leave it. You have to just kind of like stop, get away from that creative,
right.
that creative team or that creative sort of friction or that it just personality, so that happens on all sides of it, it's like I can dive in for a long time, for even with Corinne, and then there's sometimes she's like, I don't, you got to solve this. I can't, it's a puzzle. I can't help you right now with that. But I have my own puzzles, and so
right.
There's all that kind of thing, and it's but it's all good. Everybody in the National all has these other things where they can go move over to some other puzzle with playing a game with a different team of people, mm-hmm. and I'm in 3 bands right now, with my solo band and then Elvi, and then so there's all these. I'm jumping around from these projects and that's really healthy. It's like to get away from that one and let that one just.
But so does each one sort of help the other by leaving it and focusing on this makes this one maybe figure itself out? Yeah.
I think no matter what, if you put five or 6 people in a room together, for 5 days, anybody that starts, the boat starts to get really, wobble, and people just get worn out, and you get lost in it all, and that happens all over the place. It's like if you're home for too long, you get that way.
Right.
So, yeah, for me, it's like I think it's this kind of just balancing out these creative families a little bit.
Right.
But
it's interesting. I've been to lots of national shows, and I've seen lots of national parents backstage at those shows all over the world. Literally, people come in. People obviously seem supportive. You
mean
attached.
our parents?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Our parents are all, other than Brian and Scott's mom Sherry, who passed away recently. But everyone's parents are there and have been coming to the shows from when we were playing. Empty rooms.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible.
My mom literally was at a show where it was just her and Brian's sister-in-law. That was it. The only people there.
That's a deep reach.
No, yeah. The Nationals started touring way before we should have, and we did play shows to 0 people, and where the bartender's like, you guys don't have to play. And we were like, thank you. And we're just like, what are we gonna do? Play to literally no one. And then that funny part was like the woman who was out there supposed to be taking tickets, which no one came to the door. She turned out to be a big fan and had a T-shirt and then she's like, you guys aren't playing? And she was looking. It was really kind of cool. And we gave her a bunch of free merch and said no. But then we drove on. We're like, we can't. We were so exhausted.
That's kind of incredible.
That's the only time we didn't play a show.
You actually didn't play?
Yeah, we couldn't play for no one.
Right. But now, more recently I see actual national children, the band members' children at the show. Yeah. Sometimes there are 3 generations of national families at these shows.
Yeah. Yeah, and my daughter has got writing songs at home. She plays way better guitar than I ever will, and so that's fun. And all of our kids are really getting into music in real different casual ways.
Really?
And so and they also in films. Our kids are all really artsy and stuff. And I think for the most part, that's what's so great. To have been able to pay our bills and have some success and we had to balance it out with real jobs for a long time, and it's always it's not it's a rocky life to choose the arts, and there's the stuff about the touring and all that kind of stuff, but it's just the creative frustrations, the emotional waves of feeling like what you're doing and then losing an idea. Any artist is going through that, right? And you don't want to repeat yourself, but then you don't want to embarrass yourself,
right?
But our kids, I'm like, do we want our kids to do that?
Right,
yes,
right.
Yes.
You don't want them to just be
what else do you want? What else? If they want to, if they're excited. My daughter, now she's really passionate about acting and she wants to study Shakespeare and classical theater and stuff, and she wants an agent. She wants to be in movies. She wants to be in Hamnet.
I have a funny memory of your daughter. Barely.
Yeah.
You won't remember this. This was. People who don't know, I work at Beggars and I ran 480 for a long time. So Matt and I have worked together in that capacity. And this was pretty early on when I started there. It was probably 2009, 2010. So your daughter would have been young, a baby.
She's 17 now.
Yeah. And I've worked there 17 years.
So she was one. Yeah. She was a baby one.
Yeah. So I lived in Fort Greene at the time, still lived there. I was taking out my garbage when it was in front of the building. And I think I was like digging around trying to do something, and you happened to walk by with your daughter, and this voice just came, it was yours, and you said, "Things must be pretty rough at 480 right now." It looked like I was like digging through the garbage. I was like, "Oh, hey."
Did I say that?
Yes. It was a really great comedic moment.
That's not bad. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. But yeah, it is. I mean, I love the life I've been given. All that stuff also creates, like any family. It's like it gets a lot of. It gets hot between them. But I don't know. Any band, like the Beatles, any band. It's just like being in having. Even though you're making something that's just music, it's like there's no such thing as a musical emergency or you know what I'm saying? That's
yes,
John Congleton, that's what he says.
Is that his line?
Yeah. But it's just like, that's true. It's like, this is all.
You just got to write the chorus by 10.
I know. But like, what's going to happen? Nobody's going to get hurt, right? But you're just like, is this song going to be an embarrassment or is it going to work? Is it?
And that's a lot of pressure.
Right. And is it also inventive? Is it new? Is it art, or are you just like making Twinkies? You just crank. So and it's easy to start to think like, and I've been, I often am trying to a lot of stuff I've tried to write sort of like classic songs, and I was doing that a lot with the solo stuff, especially with Serpentine Prison and even this last, but like trying to write, especially working with like Booker T. Jones and stuff. And I was trying to write those kind of, but and that's but now I'm kind of like, I don't know, like what kind of song should I do? I don't feel like writing a ballad for a while, or a harp, but I also can't help write when I'm writing lyrics and stuff and getting moved by music. I write these sad ass lines, right? And what are they about? I don't know, what is it? Or angry lines, or these things that are like make me a little bit like, want to know what that's about.
Right.
And that's the way I write in these kind of little fragments and start to try to create a collage of something that kind of feels like something, and that feels honest,
Right.
Anyway.
That's the thing, but I mean, you like doing it and people like listening to it, so it's a good relationship.
Yeah, and so it's kind of heartbreaking, and so, but the arts and pursuing that and trying to like, but I do want my daughter to chase that, whatever that kind of thing is. So,
what is family to you?
I have a really, like, my parents have always just been a real nothing but a source of love and inspiration, and so kind to us and funny, and my mom and dad are awesome, and they're still alive, they're still healthy. It's great. I still talk to them all the time, and I have that relationship with my daughter too, and I really think my parents, that's whatever it was, they were, they were just never gonna. We were never afraid of getting, doing something wrong. I remember one story. They'd tell me the story about how I think I threw a cowboy boot, like a child's cowboy boot, at the door so hard I was a tantrum about something, and it was a flimsy door, and it went through the door, and I was like, that if I'm ever gonna get spanked, my parents, my mom would like chase us with the wooden spoon in a jokey way, kind of like threatening violence, but never. But then I thought for sure, and I put on like several pairs of pants, and to make it, and my mom was like, your father's going to deal with this, and he came home and he just starts laughing about the fat, the pants. So they were just like, he's like, fine, like just don't do that, and so I never felt, and if there was like, if I wanted to drink beer with my friends in high school, it's like we would do it at my parents' house, because they'd be like, just be on, everybody's asleep over, and like, don't be irresponsible. And so I've always, I have been felt, and I went to like a Jesuit high school and stuff, and there is all that stuff. I still, and the Catholic upbringing. That's real. That's still really. I don't go to church or anything like that, but that's all still all really there. I don't believe in God that way, but I do believe I'm very spiritual. I have all that kind of stuff, and so I do connect to some sort of thing about family and about how the connectedness of us.